Are you recording now?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, recording.
All right. So number 13. Stick with me here, people. Stick with me.
Yes, ma'am.
No. The first thing you do when you have a binomial to a power that's a fraction is you take everything to the reciprocal power. Right? Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So when we take it to the reciprocal power, multiply and multiply, this is 1 now. So you have x plus 6 equals 8 to the 4/3. Now, think about this.
Cube
That
root
is
of 8 to the 4th?
the cube root of 8, and then we're going to take it to the 4th. What's the cube root of 8? 2. 2 to the 4th power?
16.
16. So you get x plus 6 equals 16. And now this is a very simple math problem, right? You're just going to take away the 6. So your x is 10. Okay? And here's the beauty of you getting to use a calculator on the whole final. If you just plug a 10 back in here, go 10 plus 6 to the 3/4 power, in parentheses, of course, or 16 to the 3/4 power, and you don't get 8, you did it wrong. Check your work. Okay? So that's number 13. Number 14, f of g of 2. Where do you start on these? F or G?
F.
You start on the inside. You start on the G, right? The inside one is first, and then you move to the outside one. So we start with finding G of 2. So G of 2 is 2 squared plus 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. So G of 2 is 6. Now you're going to take f of what? 6. Whatever you got, you're going to plug that into your other function. So f of 6 is 3 times 6 plus 1, right? We just plug it in here. So 18 plus 1 is 19, and that is your final answer. Okay? Chris?
I think that's dumb. Why would they just have... Why wouldn't they just write parentheses correctly?
I don't know why they didn't just write the parentheses the way they want it worked out, but this is saying the function f of g of 2. So g of 2, we're taking the function of that g of 2 function.
But why do they put an open circle and make me go right to left instead of everything else I've ever learned?
I know. It's a little tricky, right? You'd have to ask those brilliant mathematicians. I don't have a good answer for you on that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're dead. Yeah.
That statement does not compute to me.
What? Brilliant mathematicians?
Yes.
Sad. Okay, number 16. G of f of x. So we're taking f of x. Does this one make more sense to you?
Yes, because those
the parentheses seem to make a little more sense, right? So f of x is this, okay? You're plugging an x into the f of x function. So you're plugging in an x for x, which means it's just 3x plus 1, right? That then is going to get plugged into the g of x function. So we're taking this whole thing, 3x plus 1, and putting it where? In the x spot. We're putting it here, okay? Notice x is squared, so that means that whole thing needs to be squared. So you're going to say 3x plus 1 squared plus 2. If you FOIL that 3x plus 1, you're going to get 3x plus 1 times 3x plus 1. Remember, you do not just square this and square that. That's not how squaring a binomial works. You have to FOIL it. So it's going to be 9x squared plus 3x, so I'm going to call that plus 6x. The last would be 1, and then we have the plus 2 at the end. So it's 9x squared plus 6x plus 3. Technically, you could factor out, I don't think I worked it out as far as you could have there if you wanted to. You could factor out the 3, and then you could probably still factor it again. What is that? 3x squared plus 1. Maybe not. But if you got to this point, I'm great with that. That's all I need to see, okay? 17 is f inverse of x. Do you remember what you have to do with an inverse? Inverse, you just switch your x and your y, right? So think of this as y equals 3x plus 1, right? F of x and y are interchangeable. So we're going to swap our x and our y and call it x equals 3y plus 1. And then you solve for your y. So take away the 1 and then divide by 3. So y is equal to x minus 1 divided by 3. Okay, so whenever you see that f inverse, swap x and y. Maybe you just make a little note of that to yourself. You swap your x and y and solve for y. Okay? 21 says if f of x is 4x plus 1 and g of x is 2x squared, what is the value of g of f of negative 8? So we're going to start with f of negative 8, which is 4 times negative 8 plus 1. So that's negative 32 plus 1. So f of negative 8 is a negative 31. Okay? We want g of that, right? So now it's going to be g. That feels like a weird number. Is this what it came out? Did I do something wrong? Oh, no. It's not a weird number. So g of negative 31 is what we're solving for. So come up here to g. That's going to be 2 times negative 31 squared. Are we squaring negative 62? Or are we squaring negative 31? Just the negative 31, right? It's the x squared. If there were parentheses around that, then you would multiply by 2 first and then square it. But there's no parentheses on this guy up top. So you're going to square the negative 31, which is what? Oh, I just plugged it into my calculator. So 2 parentheses negative 31 parentheses squared is how you would plug it in if you're going to plug it in. And you get 1,922. Okay. Any other questions on that chapter 6 stuff that you want to see? Yeah, Sasa. Number 9. Okay, so here's the deal with number 9. Do you remember what those are called when it's 4 minus and then 4 plus and they're the same thing?
Red.
Oh, it's wait, I got it's like something squared.
Difference is
You can
squares.
go. They're conjugates, right? When the one's plus and one's minus, but this stuff is the same. Those are called conjugates. We did a shortcut with conjugates. Maybe you want to just make a little note of that. You don't have to do the shortcut. What could you do to solve this problem? Damon, put your phone away.
Multiply them.
Foil, right? You would multiply, which is foiling, okay? So you could just foil right now and you would get the right answer.
Don't you just square it?
If you want the shortcut, what?
Don't you just square them? Like,
The conjugate shortcut is you take your a value squared and your b value squared and you subtract them. So you could square this, square that, and subtract. Okay, so I'll show you that way first. But if you don't like the shortcut, I can show you the FOIL way too. A squared would be 4 squared minus b squared is 5 rad 3 squared.
Isn't that 25?
It's not 25. 25 is part of it, right? Because you have to square both pieces of it. So this is 25 times what? What's the square root of 3 squared?
3.
3.
My bad.
So you get 16 minus 75, which is negative 59. Is that right?
I think so.
I think so. Yes?
If someone said yeah, I believe them.
Okay. I believe you too. I can't find it on here. So that's your answer. Does anyone want me to FOIL it? Do you want to see how you do it, foiling it instead?
No.
Do you want me to FOIL? This was your question, right? Yeah? Okay, let's FOIL. So if you were to FOIL this, it would be the first. So 4 times 4 is 16. The outside, so that's a positive 20 rad 3. the inside, 4 times a negative 5 rad 3 would be a negative 20 rad 3. And then the last, and here's where it gets a little hairy again, right? If you're multiplying 5 rad 3 times 5 rad 3, a negative and a positive, 5 and 5, it's going to be minus 25. And then rad 3 times rad 3 is rad 9, which is 3. So you have 20 rad 3 minus 20 rad 3 is 0. 16 minus, this is 25 times 3, so 75. And 16 minus 75, what did we say? Negative 59? Like that. Any other questions from the chapter 6 stuff?
How are you doing?
I'm tired, but I'm okay.
Okay.
You guys really do bring me joy in a day. I really look forward to 7th period. So I appreciate that you guys are my happy place, but I'm still real tired. I would really like my children to sleep and for myself to sleep and not to wake up to...
Screaming children.
Yeah. I mean, God bless them. They're so wonderful. I love them. But when they're sick, they just... They don't sleep well.
Bro, little losers.
Anything else?
Their brains aren't developed. They can't help it.
You guys aren't either. Not till you're like 26. Did you know
Yeah,
that?
we are.
Underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. You are not capable of being fully reasonable people until you're like 26 years old.
Yeah, we're
That's
fully
scary,
developed.
right?